Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's event again. My name is Simran and I'm with CANOPY. CANOPY is a co-working space based in San Francisco. And today's talk is about the future of dining with the founder of the House of Waris Botanicals, Waris Ahluwalia, and the founder of Brodo and chef of Hearth in the East Village, Canora. And we have our very own founder and CEO, Amir Mortazavi, who is going to be moderating this talk. At the end of the talk, we'll open it up to Q&A, where the audience can participate and send the questions over. You can either write it in the chat box or digitally raise your hand, which I'll put the instructions in the box also. All right, Amir, all you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Waris and Marco, for joining me today in this conversation about an issue that I feel is one that touches almost everybody's heart and minds in this country and throughout the world. And with the current health crisis, the U.S. restaurant industry has been hit harder than nearly any other sector. And it's an industry that has brought people around the world a place to bond, to be inspired by what the ingredients are, where they come from, how it's prepared in an ambiance that can stimulate engaging conversations between friends, family, and for business. It's also the venue where the majority of all adults use to gather together outside the home and the office. And a statistic I read by UBS recently said, sadly, as many as 20% of all US restaurants could close permanently due to COVID. And that number can be higher in cities such as New York and San Francisco, up to 50%, they say. So what measures do you guys think should be taken by government and community organizations to prevent this catastrophic loss? And what can you recommend that the consumer and restaurant goer can do at this time to prevent this catastrophe?
Marco, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. You know, it's funny. Today was the first day that I got back into Hearth. We have a plan to try to, you know, partially reopen. So it's like I'm living it right now. You know, the PPP program, you know, it certainly has a lot of problems, but that money has reached a lot of my fellow operators, and we're all trying to figure out how to utilize it best. There's a lot of ambiguity in that law, and you know, there's a lot of people in the restaurant industry lobbying for changes that will serve our industry. So one of the things I hope happens from a government standpoint is they need to separate industry, you know, this program, $2 trillion, they need to have different rules for different industries, and they don't have that today. They're painting with too broad of a brush. So one thing I think they're working on, and one thing I think they will do, is they'll get a little bit more specific in the language as it relates to industries. You know, there's 15 million restaurants in this country, or no, there's over 1 million restaurants and like 15 million people employed in restaurants. So, you know, we're big enough to deserve some language that's specific to our industry, and that'll really help us kind of make a path forward to give us a fighting chance to survive on the other side of this. And as far as community, you know, everybody needs to rally around and support the places that they love. And that could mean a lot of different things, right? You know, it could mean, you know, making the extra effort to walk to that restaurant and order takeout as opposed to delivery, because we give a lot of percentages to the delivery platforms, and that's not going to be tenable for us in the short term. And just being interested, providing feedback. You know, part of my challenge lately is like, I want to give the community what they want. Like, it's not so much about me and my vision and what I think Hearth should be. In a lot of ways, I want Hearth to be whatever it is the community tells me they want me to be, because I have the ability with my team and my stake in the ground for so long to provide a service and to be part of a community in a way that I would love to help. So those are, feedback from community and community support are the things, I think, for me.
That's wonderful to hear, Marco. It brings up something I just read recently about the founder of Noma in Copenhagen, one of the best restaurants in the world, just recently relaunched as a cheeseburger restaurant. From going from 13 course seasonal micro seasonal meals that they were serving to become like the everyday food source for the citizens of the neighborhood.
Well, look, he was very susceptible. He was gastro-tourism, right?
Yeah.
So people traveled from all over the world to eat at his restaurant, and that travel has completely stopped. So, very smart to pivot the way he did.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of pivoting, is there any specific, we love the word pivot, by the way, in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. We talk about it like it's a religious occurrence. And are there any specific steps or ways that you are pivoting that has been decided after you do reopen Hearth?
Absolutely. We're changing our hours of operation, so we're going to be all day instead of just dinner. We're creating basically, and this is not unique to me, it's happening in a lot of places throughout New York City, but we're basically becoming a provisions offering. So we're going to become like a grocery store that's unique to Hearth. So basically all of the mise en place that I have in my kitchen to prepare all my dishes, all the component parts, will be packaged and sold for people to use at home to help hack their cooking, because there's so much more cooking happening. So I could help them and sell them a bunch of prepared things that will make their food tastier. And I'm even going to create healthy TV dinners. So the old Swanson style compartment little tray, I'm gonna do that with green market vegetables and clean meats, and you're going to be able to take a tray out of your freezer and pop it into your oven and have an old school TV dinner that's quite healthy.
Amazing. So are you going to be creating YouTube videos and how-tos about how to create the dishes that will go along with the ingredients that they'll be given?
A lot of my colleagues have been doing that. I'm not sure I'm going to go down the road of a Blue Apron style meal kit that you assemble. But I was thinking about how to bring technology into it in a way that will help kind of drive sales and engagement. So what I'm thinking is, with my Hearth for Home provisions menu, I want to incentivize people who shop with me once a week. And if they commit to 4 deliveries in a given month, once a week for a month, I want to offer them a one-on-one 30-minute cooking class, FaceTime or Zoom call, and I will be available to them to teach them whatever it is they want to learn. So something so we both win, and it incentivizes them to, order some Hearth groceries.
Fantastic. And Waris, you recently launched a House of Waris, a tea shop in Chelsea. And it was just, remind me, it was just a few months before the COVID pandemic hit, correct?
Yeah, it was in November.
Mm-hmm. And are you guys open right now, or have you guys closed up shop?
No,
we're even be open.
We're currently closed. We closed even before the stay-at-home order came in, just for the health and safety of our team. Everyone felt a little bit shaky with the situation and not knowing, and so we just said, let's just, we don't need to be told how to take care of our team, and so we just took their what they were feeling, and we decided to close up early, and we haven't been open since then, and we're now in conversation trying to figure out what it looks like, particularly in the summer, what it looks like if people are out and about and if places are opening up, of what that looks like. But a big part of our work and our business was providing tea to restaurants, including, you know, but not just restaurants, but also to CANOPY. The tea that you serve at all your locations, that you served at all your locations, was House of Waris teas, and we thought to do that because one of the most central points to our business and of creating this business was community, and there's no business that celebrates community more than restaurants, right? It brings it's like a community center, right? You know, more so than nightclubs, more so than bars. People gather, you know, afterwards to, you know, imagine like meeting up with friends after work to complain about your day, or to, like, you know, to celebrate something, or celebrate birthdays. And our whole lives are, I mean, I met Marco originally dining at the restaurant, right? Like that was when it was as just being a guest at Hearth. And so it really is a huge part of our lives, particularly people especially people in urban environments and cities, where the cities are dotted with restaurants, and they're just, our stories, our own personal stories are told through these restaurants. And so that's, you know, it is sad to see that they will be closing, but I think that there's with everything, people that open restaurants and chefs, you know, like Marco, and entrepreneurs and restaurateurs are quite resilient, right? It's like people always say that's like the craziest business to invest in, or to open up a restaurant. So I think you know, what Marco is talking about, the TV dinners and the classes, and, you know, the one-on-one sessions, these are opportunities we would never have imagined. And, you know, so not to just be an optimist, but there is, if anyone can lead us into a better future, you know, with these changes, it's restaurant owners, right? That have you know, chefs and restaurant owners that have gathered us, and that have been the centerpieces for our gathering. So I'm excited about the potential changes to that landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, I can speak personally that I'd say 90% of all the social engagements that I do or have done in the past have been done in restaurants. That's where we congregate amongst friends, and for celebrations or casual conversations. And it's something that's universal to everybody. And it's eating good food in a wonderful atmosphere. And I mean, they're with many people I've listened to that are interviewed about the first thing they will do when shelter in place is removed and business is open as usual. One of the first things people say is, I want to go to my favorite restaurant and have this meal with these.
Yep.
And it's something that's really kind of touching about this universality of eating in an atmosphere of familiarity with people that you're engaged with. It'll be a shame for, you know, this to be lost amongst us. And I think one of the reasons why many restaurants are closing is, or will be closing, is because of the economic model of how, you know, business operators like myself have with landlords that, you know, even though we're closed, our lease agreements say that we have to still pay our rent, just like they have to pay their bank lenders who they have loans with on their commercial buildings. And how's the situation for you guys personally and overall in New York City with your landlords? Are they understanding and willing to work with you guys so that you will be able to persevere once we reopen?
You know, we're leasing 5 different leases, Hearth being one of them, and then Brodo has 4 different leases, and we've been doing a lot of negotiating, obviously. And, you know, it runs the gamut. You got old school landlords who are basically like, you sign that lease, and until I get told otherwise, you're on the hook for that thing till the end. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where there's a real understanding that this needs to be a partnership moving forward, and they're open to negotiating terms. You know, look, I believe that landlords are going to need to become business partners, because the only tenable deal, in my opinion, is a percentage rent deal. So I, in good faith, promise my landlords that I will do everything I can to provide a service to the community, and I agree to share a percentage of those revenues with them. And barring that kind of partnership and that kind of relationship, I think base rents, it's not going to work. And especially base rents at pre-COVID rates that were really, it was a stranglehold on us restaurateurs in places like New York and San Francisco especially. The rents were too high, and they've been too high for a long time, and the margins have been too small for a very long time. And to think that a post-COVID world is going to support rents of what they were, I think is silly. And I think the smart landlords are going to realize that they need to become good partners, and they need to help us figure out a way through. Because, you know, the commercial real estate market in urban centers is going to change dramatically on the other side of this thing. In my opinion, there's no question about that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm in agreement with you as well. We're in a business that is also very much operations based, and I think landlords need to, you know, ride our success when we're successful and times are great. But then when we're in, you know, unprecedented times like now, they need to evolve as well. Otherwise, if they end up doing the unforsaken, which is evict you because you're not able to pay rent since you're closed, or businesses are not able to operate at full capacity because of distancing rules and laws, I think they would be very foolish to believe that they can just turn around and re-rent out the space to someone else at the previous market rents.
That was always their, you know, they were always able to do that in the past. So they really had a great negotiating platform, because it's, you know, it's kind of like, you don't like it, then there's somebody knocking on my door, so bye-bye. You know, for the first time in many, many decades, that will not be the case in places like New York City and San Francisco.
Right. And do you feel that there will be a threat from, you know, the well-financed franchises of the world that could come in and take over more mom and pop owned restaurant spaces? Is that something that's lingering within the restaurant and food community, you feel, or?
No, I mean, I'm not hearing a lot of that in places like Manhattan and such. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, my big dream and hope on the other side of this is I hope that people will be unwilling to spend much of their dollars on nutrient empty foods.
Right. Yeah, which is a good segue into my next question. I recently was forwarded from a family WhatsApp chat about a segment by Bill Maher, who says that the way for humans to win our million-year war with microbes is to not avoid them. Our immune system is what will protect us from COVID. Pillows, for example, have over 350,000 bacteria colonies on your pillow that you sleep on every night with your head in it. You aren't going to avoid harmful bacteria. You can live a lifestyle through exercise and what we consume, where we can strengthen our immune system, though. There are people, though, that don't have a strong enough immune system, and those people should definitely be protected from the ones who do have a strong immune system and may have COVID and can transfer it to others. And so I think he says this is more of a human health problem than a bacterial problem. And do you think that there will be a greater trend towards food and drinks that will be served to help boost our immune systems? And what specific ingredients or recipes are you creating to do so? Let's start with Waris, with House of Waris Botanicals, because I know that the health benefits of tea are something that are now starting to be known much more widely? And what is it that you're doing marketing wise as well as product wise to be able to help people with their immune deficiencies?
Well, even before we had these conversations that we're having now about protecting immunity and a pandemic and a virus that's taken down governments and businesses and nations, we were under attack largely due to our own actions, and we just never recognized it. We were living in what was not a pandemic, but what the UN called the 21st century epidemic, and that's stress, right? We, every day, between what we intake, between the food that we intake, the pharmaceuticals that we intake, and then the lives that we live externally with the daily, from morning to night, the stress that we face, in a regular life, never mind pandemic, just regular life. And that was why we started House of Waris Botanicals, right? It was to address that need and to start that conversation that, stress it was almost a form of socially, it's like a socially acceptable form of mental illness that we, like particularly in New York, if you told someone you were stressed, they would just pat you on the back, right? And so it's like that's great. That means you're doing something right. And it's like, no, it means you're not going to be able to avoid stress, but you can create habits and systems in place to better react to stress so that it doesn't take you down, right? And that's the essence of immunity, right? Creating systems within your body and in your life that so that when you do get attacked by whatever it is, you're able to withstand that attack. And so that's what the company, that's the premise, that's the big premise of the company was built on, to teach people about that conversation. And tea in itself, we looked at tea, but then also herbs and a special classification of herbs called adaptogens that help your body adapt to external stressors and bring your body back to balance. We looked at basically ancient technologies, like solutions that cultures have celebrated for hundreds of years. Not just, everyone always talks about, when you talk about herbal medicine, everyone talks about traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, or Ayurveda from India, but every culture across the planet, every indigenous culture has worked with herbs, right? And whether it's in North America or Europe or Eastern Europe, or Russia, Asia, every culture has had it. And so we're just going back to those original ingredients, right? Then going back to those and just saying there is a great value, right? That in taking things slowly, there's a great value in building up over time, the ability to, your vitality, right? That's sort of like, it's being proactive, right? And I know like this is a great conversation, and I know Marco is a great believer in this, because that's the same thing with bone broth, right? And Brodo, and I'll let him speak to that. But it's really what we have to start paying attention to.
Yeah, I want to, I'm so on board with all of that you said, Waris, and I think what the cool thread is, I really think we need to start looking back at what we've been eating. Like, we all got off course, in the 40s and 50s when we started manufacturing food and we started outsourcing our food. And if you look around the globe, we should be looking back 100 years around the globe, and we should be glomming on to what they were doing then. And you know what they were doing then? They weren't going far away for their food. They were getting it locally, and they were using whole foods like herbs, and they were using the entire animal and making nourishing broth and foods that have a long history in my opinion, are the foods that we need to put in our body. And I'm sorry, but Doritos and Whoppers haven't been around very long. But you know what has been around very long? Wonderful botanicals like Waris is using, and things like, you know, animal protein and broth, and like these traditional foods that have long histories on every corner of the globe. Like, if you want to know what you should be eating, well, there's your answer. Look at what history tells you. And that's what Waris is doing, and that's what I'm doing. And I hope that's where the world shifts to, because, you know, the statistics in this country speaks to that sad American diet that we've been referencing for the past 5 to 10 years. The reason why, you know, we've had so many deaths compared to other countries is because our health is compromised more than any other country. And we need to wake up, and we need to understand it starts with food, because that's what we do every day. And disease is like a slow and steady build. So, you know, the habits of what you put in your body and your stress, the way you deal and manage your stress, I mean, these are the things that really impact the quality of one's life.
Marco, to continue on that, looking back at those foods and looking back 100 years is so important, and to understand how we ended up here today, right? It wasn't just by chance. It wasn't just like all of a sudden it naturally, there was concerted effort by business and by government to lie to us, to extract the most amount of money they could, right? 100 years ago was, you know, even America, they used herbal medicine. It was prevalent here, and of course they also used, you know, leeches for, you know, blood sucking, and, you know, that was, but there's a balance. You know, you're not saying let's go back to, let's get rid of all of our technology and let's get rid of everything we learned. Let's keep everything we learned, and then take the things that were learned that worked back then and plug them in today. But we, you know, 100 years ago, we entered into what could be called the herbal dark ages, when pharmaceutical companies came around, right? Mm-hmm. And so they had to brush the herbs under the rug, and they had to say, no, that's bad. It's not tested. It's the wrong way to do it. And you have to take these pills that will help you address your problems. And because it creates quick solutions, and it creates wealth, right, for a select few. And that it's the same thing that the food industries, right? The same thing. It comes down to, if we want to pull back and understand the problem, it comes back to a concerted effort to lie to us, to extract the most amount of money, financial maximization, right? It comes to what's the most I can take from you, Marco? Not like a little bit or a half, or what, like how, so that you have some left over. What's the most? And it's a principle that we've used in imperialism. It's a principle we've used, across the board. Like, what's the most I can extract from the planet? It's all tied together, right? Yeah. Instead of, let's take a little bit. You have $1. Let me take 20 cents or 30 cents, because then you can use that other 20 to give. I want that $1, right? I want the whole thing, right? And I want all of it. And so that's really the issue, and that's what's really up for grabs here. And it's really up to each individual to go, I'm not going to eat like that anymore.
Yeah, where do you spend your dollar, right?
Yeah. That's it. It's up to each individual. It's up to every individual as to how they want to spend that $1, how they want to spend their hours, how they want to spend their minutes, what they want to support.
No doubt.
Yeah,
it's one of the, spending that $1 is a great topic, because it gets very, you could fall into some rabbit holes pretty damn quick if you start talking about spending those dollars, because it's been a rigged game for a long time, and you can get a lot of calories for a very small amount of dollars, on the heels of big food doing their thing for the past 50 years, right? Think about $10 at McDonald's and what it gets you in terms of volume of food and calories of food. And sadly, we still live in an environment where many people, including very smart doctors, talk about a calorie as a calorie. And it's mind-blowing to me. But one of the fights we need to fight is like convincing people to eat less of higher quality and more nutrient dense. And that's a very tough game when 2 liters of Coke cost 59 cents, you know? It's a very hard game. But I got to tell you, I have faith because, you know, as a chef, it's like, I see it as my duty as a chef to make foods that are as delicious as Doritos, that are made from real things. And I think I can do it because I cook some delicious fucking food. And I think that, you know, we could win that fight given the chance.
And not only do you think you can do it, I'd like to vouch for, I know you can do it because I've tasted the food over and over and over again. In fact, you even showed me how to make some of that using the broth last week. Amir, I don't know if you caught that, but Marco and I did a digital dinner club, and the reluctant chef over here, being myself, made a head. And it was using the vegan broth, and it was absolutely delicious. And I know from everyone that was in the house, that everyone that I live with, they loved it, and that was really special.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of having some bone broth. Is it Lafayette Street, which it's on? So
yeah, in Soho.
At the little storefront there. Mm-hmm. And I definitely agree with the two of you that, you know, education is really key at this point for, you know, teaching people about their well-being and about, you know, having the right caloric intake and the limited and limiting it as well, right? And it serves as marketing purposes to help grow the business, as well as to help the well-being of the people that are consuming it. And since both of you guys are involved with Brodo and Waris Botanicals, have you guys that are both companies which have these health benefits for people to consume during a time where, you know, increasing immunity levels is important? Have you guys seen sales go up for Brodo and House of Waris, and attention to the companies to be able to serve as, you know, a kind of a shelter against diseases and viruses?
Waris, go ahead.
Well, you know, your choice of words, we, as Marco and I have discussed several times, we you know, we always have to have that FDA disclaimer as to what this food or this drink or this tea can do because of the system that's set up. But I feel like the intelligent consumer has awoken, and, you know, whereas our primary business was restaurants and our tea house before, our online business has been growing. It has been growing, and we've seen sales. We've definitely seen sales increase from where we were in January to where we are now. And I think that just shows, you know, that data shows that people are interested in this kind of product. And I know, you know, before I forget that we've Marco and you know, Brodo and House of Waris Botanicals have just done a partnership, so that, you know, when you go to any location, you can order any one of the broths and add an immunity booster from our latest tea, Immunity One. And we were super excited. We were working on that for a long time, and
too long.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. And it's like, it really, and I got to tell you, Marco, the number of emails that I've gotten from people going, you know, this is amazing. This is like people that I haven't heard from in so long, just out of the blue, like that are on like the mailing list, that just reached out and go, this is genius, this is amazing. And the you know, our audience is, you know, I think that it's up to us as well. And as I said before, the opportunity for change and development and rethinking the way we do things is now, right? And
No doubt.
And so it's up to us to create these partnerships, and particularly with like-minded businesses, right? That's an amazing thing, that we're both businesses that are struggling to keep our employees working and struggling to keep our businesses afloat, if you know, and there's strength in numbers. And so this is a perfect example of that makes me proud to be a small business owner, that makes me proud to be doing something like this, and you know, working to and create a product that can help someone at this time, in a really delicious and beautiful way.
You sparked my interest. What's in this added ingredient to the bone broth?
Well, it's our immunity tea, Immunity One, and it has you know, the ingredients that have been tried, tested, and true, like elderberry, hyssop, amla, which is a, you know, Ayurvedic ingredient. It has the cordyceps, which are you know, used. I used to, before taking this, I used to take cordyceps. It's a mushroom. I used to take that as a powder. So it really, it's the thing with something like bone broth, and the thing with these adaptogenic blends, and it's about how you take them and how you continue to take them. None of these things are a short-term solution, right? If something is a short-term solution, a light bulb should go off in your head, and you should immediately realize there's something wrong with that. There is no short-term solution. There is no quick fix, right? And we've been, for so long, part of what I was talking about, we've been lied to and we've been misled to think that there are short-term solutions for problems, right? And so we take a pill, and that targets an organ, or that targets whatever it is that ails us, and we think that we've done something good, but what it creates, that pill then creates side effects, right? Another way to look at side effects is, and it creates an imbalance. The way herbs and adaptogens and you know, healthy eating, it works with us, the whole system. There's no organ in your body stands alone, right? It's all connected, right? And so it's over a length of time. You have to make a commitment to these things. You have to make a commitment to yourself. It's the same idea of meditation, right? Like, you meditate, like, oh, I'm having a rough day and I'm going to meditate this morning, and it's not going to solve anything, right? It's about the length of time you take these things, and you commit to transformational change within your body, within your mind, of being able to say that I'm going to allow for this slow change. And then it's incredible what can happen on the other side if you allow it to.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting because, like, disease, especially the diseases that we suffer from in America, like the metabolic diseases of insulin resistance, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, heart disease. These are key metrics in metabolic disease. And guess what? Like, Americans, it's a slow build, right? We do something, we kind of don't take care of ourselves for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And then this disease burden hits us hard in our 50s or 60s or 70s, if we're lucky, in our 70s and 80s. But it's a slow build. And to your point, Waris, the fix is a slow fix as well. You know, like, you don't just wake up with heart disease and blood sugar of 400 and insulin sensitive and, you know, unsensitive insulin. So that's exactly right. And if you look at the way in which we get disease, it proves the fact that, like, we have to change our habits, and it's got to be for the long haul. And it's not, I'm going to meditate this morning because I'm stressed out. It's find the discipline to do the things on the daily and make it your life. And that's how you get away from disease.
Yep.
And by the way, I wanted to say too about Waris's Botanicals. and my broth and food, it's like, look, I really believe that we humans crave tasty things, and we want to feel comforted by the things we put in our body, and we want to feel soothed by the things that we put in our body. So, you know, there's a lot of like fake foods out there that are hiding behind function, and they don't provide any soulful satisfaction. And like, we lead at Brodo with flavor first, and Waris's Botanicals lead with flavor. And like, you steep that immunity blend in water, and the aroma that comes off of it is astonishing, and the flavor resonates. And it's like, that's what's gonna allow somebody to put this into their life on the regular. So, you know, it has to be flavor first, in my opinion. It can't just be function.
Absolutely. People are not interested, as we've seen it, people are not interested in just sort of, oh, this is good for you, right? Like people
for a minute, they will for a minute.
Yeah. It has to hit the pleasure, right? It has to make them smile. It has to make them go, oh, the sort of the pleasure synapses, those things have to go off, right?
Yeah. And by the way, it's super healthy.
And yeah, I completely agree with both of you that, you know, there is no quick injection of a serum that can solve all your problems and increase your health immunity. It's truly a lifestyle change that includes, you know, active, healthy lifestyle, to eating well, and also having balanced mental health too that goes along with it, and a society that, you know, supports these lifestyles. And I think, thankfully, it seems like the trends are going in that direction where you won't get laughed at for drinking 5 cups of tea a day, or having a cup of bone broth in your coffee mug when you're walking down the street. You know, 10, 15 years ago, that may have been a very different thing. I know that we're limited on time here, and I just wanted to ask one more question regarding reopening. And we're seeing some gimmicky techniques used to distance people in Europe, such as wearing noodles on your head to keep 6 feet apart. I just read that a restaurant in DC has like mannequins sitting at tables next to you, so that the restaurants are not as dense. What precautions are you guys taking in thinking about when you open up the tea bar and your restaurants?
So in Manhattan, we're far away from opening our doors for old style people coming in and sitting down. So I haven't given much thought to like what service looks like from a customer standpoint when we open, because it's kind of far away. But I have been giving a lot of thought to bringing employees back, because we actually were in there today, you know, producing some food for World Central Kitchen today. And I've been thinking for weeks about what that's going to look like. And, you know, it's kind of the standard stuff. And like, we often like brush aside the standard stuff, but like Atul Gawande did a great piece in the New Yorker last week. And it was like, you know what, one of the best things to do is wash your hands 7 times a day. And if you wash your hands 7 times a day, it reduces your chance of getting it by like 50%. So it's like, we set a timer in the restaurant that goes off every 90 minutes, and it's like a fun little game. So every 90 minutes, an alarm goes off, and we all wash our hands. Obviously, we all have masks. Thankfully, my restaurant's large enough that it allows me to have social distancing. A lot of these tiny East Village restaurants, I don't know, it's not even possible to do social distancing. So I don't know what they're going to do. So I feel very lucky to have enough space to do social distancing. And you know, all the standard stuff, like there's nothing revolutionary in terms of what we need to do to mitigate against the spread of this disease.
Have the authorities in New York come up with any sort of guidelines or that they've communicated with restaurants and cafes of what they need to prepare for when they open?
Yeah, the New York City Hospitality Alliance and and state government, they provided a plethora of documentation about what to do. But again, it's like there's nothing in there that's super revolutionary. It's really the standard practice of, sanitation, hand washing, mask wearing, distancing. So it's all pretty much there for us. It's kind of like, what do you need to do to be healthy? It's like people want to debate that shit forever. It's like, you know what? It's all right in front of you. So let's not make believe it's complicated. It's not.
That's good to know that it can be simplified and it's not a wishy-washy, always evolving, guidelines that are hard to follow. Simran, I know we're short on time. Do you want to?
Well, we've got 10 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, let's go ahead and you can send them our way. You can either put them in the chat box, or I put the instructions as to how to raise your hand in there. Hold on 1 second, then we just resend it to you all.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Bacchus. Bacchus is one of our members, by the way.
Hi.
Member number one to be
Amy,
exact.
because she disabled the video. I don't know why she did that, but I'm here. I'm a person, and I like to drink tea, and I like the ritual of tea. And I'm wondering about how you guys are going to go about, other than like tutorials, which I love that idea. How will you go about taking the great stuff that you've created or found, tea or the food, and make it into rituals? How will you make rituals that maybe people won't have in your establishments, but you'll give them the ritual along with the ingredients and the goodness, the herbs, the original, whatever it is?
It's a good question. Marco?
I think of tea as a more ceremonial ritual. So I think this would be for you, Waris.
Thanks, Marco.
Sorry, I just do. I'm honest.
I mean, so for us, always, people always talk about tea ceremonies, and they imagine what that is, and they think of the Chinese tea ceremony or the Japanese tea ceremony, and none of those are really applicable to daily life. Where you're not going to spend a half an hour on a 40 minutes and on a cup of, on some loose tea. You're just, it's not reasonable to ask someone to do that. And so we've always, from the very beginning, talked about people, even prior to this pandemic, of creating their own rituals, right? It's not, we provide you with the ingredients, and you create your story around that, right? We're the platform for that. The ritual that we talk about is quite simply the amount of time it takes to make a cup of tea, and looking at that. So if you put the hot water to boil, and then you take the tea out of the tin, and you put it in your teacup, the water boils a few minutes later, and you pour that into your teacup, and you let it steep, and it's going to steep for a few minutes. The one ritual that we suggest, and we strongly suggest, is in that time, put your phone away. It's that simple. Rituals don't have to be extravagant. You don't have to wear a costume for it. Just put your phone away. And
I always wear a costume.
I mean, you can if you want to, but that's why it's up to you. But just put your phone away and be there with yourself in that process. If that just means watching the steam, watching the color get richer and darker with the tea, like take that time to breathe. It's a gift to you, right? And so really own that time.
I think it's also important to start small. You can have a grand idea of a ritual you want to have, but you can't just go straight into every morning I'm going to have tea and and meditate. No, it's like start off with, today I'm going to boil water, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions that people have? Is there anything that either Marco or Waris wants to add before we wrap up our discussion today?
Yeah, even if if we talked a lot about going to the shop and you can buy the broth, but even if you're not in New York, you can download the app or you can buy it online, and you can buy both the broth and the tea online. And Marco said he will hand deliver it. Isn't that what you said, Marco?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll deliver it to San Francisco. We hope to open up a shop in your fine city one day.
We would love nothing more.
There's actually a question that came in from Brian Bachman, who is also a CANOPY member. I'm going to unmute him and he can ask it.
Yeah, hi, Marco. This is Brian. I wanted to ask you, when you're talking to your landlords, trying to get to a percentage rent, kind of a number, what's your number you're shooting for?
I think it needs to be somewhere between 7.5 and 10.
Yeah, those sound like reasonable numbers. I think 10 in our market, because of our labor being so high, I think that's probably a high number for San Francisco.
Yeah, I think if it's 10 or higher, it doesn't work, to be honest. I think 7 is the right number. I would start the negotiation at 5 in hopes that I end up at 7, 7.5.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. All right, any last words from either of you or Amir?
Just want to thank you both for joining us.
I can't help myself. I always want to say this whenever I have a platform, which is, outsourcing your food to someone who's invested in profits in their business doesn't usually go well for your health. So it's like, I love that people are cooking again. I think cooking is an incredibly powerful act that I hope on the other side of this we'll realize just how powerful it is and just how important it is to our health. And the community needs to support those businesses that create foods with your health in mind. And that's a very difficult thing to ask for. And there's not many people that are doing that really. And I hope that our communities rally and support those businesses that keep your health in mind as they create foodstuffs for you to consume.
Completely agree, Marco. Thank you so much for that. And thank you both for being here. It's been really exciting, to get you guys on here and having a really fun conversation with you. And thank you, Amir, for moderating today. This has been recorded. So everyone that is on that's on the Zoom, I will email you the YouTube link. I'll also email everybody that registered over Eventbrite, and feel free to share with everybody. Everyone needs to be educated about the work that you're doing and how we can all be more aware of how to make ourselves better as we get through this. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
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 Take care.
Stay safe.